Does having to work to deadlines, either for clients or employers or universities or set by yourself, have a positive or negative impact on how you structure your time in approaching a creative project?
I love deadlines, even though I always break them, but to have them is something that is essential, because otherwise somehow you get into this limbo of making things even more perfect, and sometimes it's really it's wrong. Sometimes you just have to say, okay, I'm making, and especially if you work alone, you just have to be forced to make a decision right now, and not to postpone it to the next year.
As much as I hate it when the deadline is coming up, it's I think it's necessary to be able to be finished in any way. The only structure is that I wake up and then I work and until I don't, if that makes sense. So having a deadline is like the only structure that's like implied, and for me it works.
Yeah, I mean, for me it's crucial to have some boundaries to the things I'm making, because if there's like no deadlines or any expectations in that manner, it just keeps growing and growing and growing, and I will never kind of get to finish it. And I mean, it's a very like relatable idea, but also I think kind of on the other side of it, it's like if there are too many deadlines or maybe too specific, it can kind of mess up the flow a little bit, because some days I'll have like tons of inspiration and work very well, and then others it's different. So it's kind of like a balancing act, like having deadlines and being structured in that way, but also having enough space that you can kind of have a more organic process and let things kind of come as they want to, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So for me, I think deadlines, I mean, it really depends. I think deadlines can be a good thing. I mean, I do come from a production side, so I have to say that, yay for the deadlines. But I have to say that if it's too much, I mean, if the workload is just too much for the deadline, I think it is ridiculous how one can like work one off just to like get it at a certain time. And for us, for example, we did have really strict deadline because it was like a student project. There was a certain date where it had to be done, otherwise the studio would have been gone. And we had only 3 weeks to animate, and it's like 5 minutes, so it's really not a long time. So we actually had like shifts of like day and night work just to make it happen, which is ironic because the film is a little bit of a burnout and working too much, and we kind of were stuck right in the middle of it just to be done by a certain time. So I would say it can definitely be negative.
And I think that deadlines are good because the deadline with this diploma was pushing me further to finishing it. Because I said that it took me quite long, and for this 1 minute project, it's like we had like, I don't know, maybe 4 months, something like that. Yeah, it was quite long.
To be honest, I'm really bad with deadlines. I wish I could like give advice and say a lot of stuff, but I'm very like time optimist. So I'm quite happy to work like with the production companies when we do commissions, because I think it's quite hard, and I always like think I can do something and then I end up working quite late. But I do like to have a deadline. I think I wanted to make a film prior coming to RCA, but it was not only a deadline issue, it was of course like budget issue and having time. But I think for me, to not have any deadline, I really struggle like to get things done, or I can like dwell too long on each moment, like each stage of the filmmaking. So for me, it's really good like have a deadline, even if I might not liking it in the moment, because I'm like, oh, if I had more time, I will make it better. Or if I have a bit more time, I will do it like this. But I think for me personally, I really need to have some sort of deadline to get things done. It's like almost two different things. Like when I do my short films, I'm a bit more hands-on myself. Normally it has like, I have more time, but I have less money. So it's a bit more up to me. And I struggle more with the deadlines because I'm bad at like knowing how much time things are going to take for me, and I end up working a bit late. And when we do like a commission, it's almost the opposite. There is okay with money, but there's very little time. So then I'm quite happy to work with like producers and a bigger team. And then it's a bit more, it's not so much up to me it's not my responsibility to finish in time. It's a bit more like the producers and everyone who is like involved on that level. And I can focus a bit more on directing. So I think there I don't need to make sure that we make it in time. It's more like with my own personal work where it's more difficult.